Hi guys, my name is Tanya and we're going to draw Halloween illustration in Affinity Designer. You can download sketch, brushes and color palette in description to this video. First, let's create new document with size 1000 to 1000 pixels. The next thing we do is place the sketch and import color palette. To place sketch on canvas, select menu, File, Place, choose the file and drag mouse from the top left corner to the bottom right. Then select Import Document Palette to place the colors I have prepared for you. You will have a palette with more colors than I do right now. It's because I will add more colors during this video, and eventually you will get the final and full palette. In the first part of this illustration, we will create shapes for all the objects and then we will add shading and highlights in the second part. I'll create a new layer and place it under the sketch so that new shapes will appear in this position, otherwise new layers will always be on the top of the sketch and we will need to drag it down. And set opacity for the sketch about 40%. Let's choose a dark gray color and the rectangle tool. Draw a rectangle the size of a cat's head. Oh, and we should also lock the sketch. We should do that. When your rectangle is selected, click Convert to Curves to have more power over the shape. After that, select two top points with the Node tool and create rounded corners with Corner tool. What we need to do here is create a rounded corner shape like on the sketch. And do the same operation with two bottom points. Still, this bottom part needs to be more rounded, so I'll add a point in the middle, move the other two a little up, then select the middle point again and click on Convert Smooth, and eventually the shape will look just like one on the sketch. Next thing, we're gonna need a pen tool, but before we go any further, most of the shapes in this illustration will be done with the pen tool, so if you're new to that, I'd recommend watching a few detailed tutorials in the description to this video. But basically it works like creating anchor points and dragging the handles to create a curve. The handle can be deleted with Option keyboard key on Mac, and curve can be moved around in general or only by handles by holding Command keyboard key. You can also move around anchor points by holding the Command key. So let's create an ear using a pen tool. We can copy the shape by holding the Shift and Option key while dragging the shape. To flip it horizontally, click on this icon. With a simple ellipse tool and black color, I'll create the hole in the pumpkin. Next, let's create a dark gray paws. And let's organize all the layers as well. On the bottom layer will be the pumpkin, and again we'll create it with a pen tool and orange color. For the top part, you'll already have a good green color in the palette. We will draw the top part with the pen tool again. The upper half will have a yellow color and the bottom is orange color from the palette. Once we've done, let's group these objects and call them top. The next thing I want to do is eyes. I'll create a gradient from yellow and violet color, but you will already have this gradient in the palette. Take the rectangle tool and create a rectangle by the size of an eye from the sketch. Then convert it to curves, and with corner tool we want to create the same shape as on the sketch. With Node tool you can move the points and make smooth curves. With Gradient tool, edit the gradient if needed, and with Ellipse tool and dark gray color, draw a pupil, and with white color, a flare. Also for the eyes, I usually add transparent ellipses to simulate the depth. It can be done with transparency tool. Once one eye is complete, let's make a group for it. While holding Shift and Option key, let's make a copy and place it where the right eye should be. When working with eyes, I don't like when pupils are 100% mirrored and identical. Also, the flares on the eyes are usually not mirrored. For the nose, I'll use Pen tool, Corner tool, and Violet color from the palette. It's time to create a pumpkin face. Again, I will use Pen tool for this. The color, let's set the orange from the palette. For the dark part of its eye, we will use the mask. Now watch very carefully if you're new to this. First, let's draw this part you want to be masked, and then drag and drop this layer like this. Let's watch this again. It must be dropped a little under the layer. I will have another masked shade inside this layer to make more depth. And it should have a bit more transparency. Let's duplicate this eye and mirror it and transform it a little bit because it's not identical. For the mouth, I'll use Pen tool again, same colors, and a mask. And let's create a group for the pumpkin face. You can start now with shading, select Brush tool and open Brushes menu. You can use your own brushes, but if you downloaded my brushes, you'll find it in Grain Texture menu. In the Stroke panel, you can change size of the brush. We'll create violet color shading around ears first. Just draw a curved line with brush tool somewhere outside the ear shape and make this layer masked. Do the same with the other ear. Next, I'll do the same shading around the head shape, and also curve can be edited with Node tool. I also set the transparency a bit so it will not be so bright. Let's add more shading under eyes. For this shading I choose less intense grain brush. Now we gotta do some shading on paws and distinct the fingers, but how would we do that if we have solid shape for the paw? The answer is simple: invisible masks. First, let's create a shape that will be a mask for the finger. Once you've created the shape, it's important to set the color for it. It should be dark gray, like the paw. Then, put it inside paw layer to be masked. Finally, let's draw a curved line with brush tool and make it as a mask inside our invisible finger. Once we've done, you can just duplicate that finger and arrange it to the back. On the other paw, you can use the same fingers, just copy and paste it, reflect, and make it masked to paw layer again. On the top of the paws, I also decided to make some highlight with the gray brush. Also, if you select all layers with brush, you can change color at once. I'll change violet to orange for now. Also, in this part of this video, I've drawn orange strokes on pumpkin, but eventually I decided not to keep it, so you don't have to draw it. We need to edit gradient on the pumpkin, select pumpkin layer, and then gradient tool. On top panel, you change type to elliptical and inverse the gradient so the center color will be lighter. After that, let's make the gradient more flattened. What we're gonna do next is create invisible masks on pumpkin, just like we did on Paws, but there is a gradient on the pumpkin, so the masks must be really invisible. Select any color with pen tool and draw a shape that repeats the facet of the pumpkin, something like this. Then take a brush tool with grain brush, just like we did before, and create a brush stroke near the shape. After that, make this layer masked to the pumpkin facet shape. Then select main shape, go to the color panel and set opacity to 0%. So the invisible mask with brush should look like that. I can edit the curve with node tool as well. And then let's make the copy by holding Option key on keyboard. And I put these masks inside pumpkin layer. It's sort of mask inside the mask. The next, I'll create more copies and edit the mask borders with the node tool, so it will be repeating the pumpkin facets silhouettes from the sketch. And since the pumpkin gradient was changed, the color of the pumpkin face should also be lighter for a better contrast. So let's change eyes and mouth orange color to yellow, and the shadow inside eyes that used to be yellow is now orange. And we continue to duplicate invisible masks with grainy brush strokes inside and edit it with node tool. On the right side of the pumpkin, position of the brush strokes should be changed to opposite. Also, I add some yellow color strokes to define volume of the pumpkin, and with transparency tool I've added some gradient transparency to it. On the top of the eyes I've added some strokes as well, but this is optional. Now we can work on the top part, pumpkin head, but we will need to create a similar effect on the top as we did on the main pumpkin. First, let's change the yellow part to gradient. Take a yellow-orange gradient, and with gradient tool, let's edit it a little bit. Set the type to elliptical and inverse the gradient colors. Next part is a hard one. We will need to create invisible masks again, because top part had a lot of facets. First, turn on the sketch and with pen tool create a first facet with any color. Then it's important to copy-paste this shape, and with Node tool, take the two top points and drag them to the place where the next facet should end. We only care about the part which is visible, and eventually it will all be masked to the orange gradient big shape. Then do the same operation with the rest of the facets one by one. The part behind this green planting can stay without the masks. In the end, you will have many shapes that looks like petals. Select all those shapes and drop it to be masked inside top part of this pumpkin head. And while they all are selected, change the opacity to 0% in color pattern. Now when we have all these invisible shapes, we can start create yellow brush strokes and mask it to the corresponding invisible shape. The first one is created and I'm dropping it inside the first layer. Again, we can just duplicate this brushstroke and put it in the rest of the shapes, making a small alterations with Node tool. Also, I've decided to create a dark brush stroke as well, so in each shape there will be two masked brush strokes, and we can experiment with transparency. I have set 40% for the orange brush strokes. And of course you can draw each brush stroke individually if you want. I personally like to draw just once and duplicate the rest. And as I said before, I've deleted all the orange strokes on the pumpkin and made some alterations to the masks we previously did. On the top part there are still small details left to draw: dark green shape and dark green masked brushstroke. Since we have pumpkin part done, I've decided to change some of the shading on the cat's head and paws to orange color. Originally I haven't planned to draw a cat's mouth, but to do that we can use the same technique with invisible masks. Just draw an ellipse, then draw a brush stroke in the bottom, make it as a mask and set opacity to 0 for ellipse. Change color to orange for a brush stroke, make alterations with no tool if you need. Then you can duplicate this ellipse 2 more times to create a cat face. As a final touch to this part, we should draw a cat whiskers. Just draw a few lines with pen tool, set the stroke size to around 5 points. Then select all the stroke layers and change the pressure of the stroke like in my example, if you want whiskers to be a little bold in the ends. Under the pumpkin, I want to create dark grainy shadow. Just draw a line with a pen tool using really bold grainy brush. Make this line into an upside down arc. I set the stroke size to 200 points and leave it like this for now. Originally, I wanted to create some autumn leaves around the cat. And since each leaf will not be completely unique, we should draw around 4 or 5 different leaves and put their copies around the illustration. I'll start by drawing first leaf, which will be a cartoon version of a maple leaf. I'll use photo reference to create a recognizable silhouette, but edges will be soft. It will be a really simplified version of a maple leaf. I will put the good colors later when I'll have all my leaves ready and put it in the composition, but for now I'll just use some random color for the leaf itself. want all leaves should be the same style, so I'll use the same stroke size for stem and inner lines. All white lines on the leaves I group as separate group, just in case I'll later decide I will need different color and it will be easier to change it. And I want stem to be a part of the main leaf shape, so it will be easier to change the whole leaf color very quickly. Otherwise, I would need to select two separate layers and change color individually because stem is made out of stroke. Select stem and menu expand stroke, and then select both layers and click add, and this will make them as one whole shape. Also, it's very important to keep your layers neat at this point because there will be a lot of layers when we create the background and it will be hard to navigate. Group your first leaf and call it leaf 1, for example. I will create 3 more leaves and make individual groups for each one. Once different leaves are created, we can start making composition by duplicating, rotating and scaling the leaves around. I have also added 2 more branches to diversify leaf composition. Next, I'm importing 5 gradients that I borrowed from another illustration. You will find all these gradients in your color palette. After import, we will use it for coloring the leaves. The 6th gradient in this collection should be pumpkin color yellow-orange gradient that we used before. Some leaves should also be filled with this color. So after we placed all the leaves around, I'm selecting the leaf shape part and clicking on the gradient in the palette. By using gradient tool, we can control the direction. Since some of the leaves are done, I did some tests with the background color, but haven't chosen the best one yet. I'll return to this later. Meanwhile, I add some more visual noise like small ellipses and short straight lines between the leaves. Let's move the illustration a little up to make room for leaves in the bottom and also duplicated more leaves on the top. On the bottom leaves that are supposed to lay on the ground, we can add some more shadows. The same type shadows that are under the pumpkin. We can just make the brush size smaller and stroke shorter, and in some places we can use transparency tool. I'm trying to find a good background color and I've decided the best is violet and dark gray gradient. If you choose the same, make your shadows black with transparency. Also, I've selected all white lines on the leaves and set the color to black with transparency. This will work better with this particular background. Now, as the very final step, when we will see how the whole illustration looks, we can work with the contrast. I now see that the cat is a bit lost on the background, so I'll change its color with global color by double-clicking on the dark gray in the color palette. We can change it to black and it will change everywhere on the illustration. But it will only work if you use the dark gray color exactly from the palette, not by some other method. Anyway, I think we're done in here. Hope you enjoyed drawing this illustration. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to click on the like button and subscribe for more illustration videos. Comment down below if you have any questions. Thanks once again and bye bye!